Hey, what's up, everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to Get Hit with the Truth. So today, doing the What's Next on the undefeated rising welterweight star, Jaron Ennis. Ennis, Saturday, April 10th, main evented a Showtime card and busted into the top 10 with an impressive ass knockout victory over Sergey Lipinets. So now we're going to run through the top 10 for Jaron Ennis and see what's next for him following that monster win. Now, a couple things he pointed out was that he's to get a top name, he's probably going to have to become a mandatory challenger, and I absolutely agree with that. I don't think any of the stars at 147, and that's the toughest division in boxing, I don't think any of the stars are going to want to line right up to fight him. But you never know. Let's run through the top 10 and see what's possible. Okay, so we start with Errol Spence Jr., #1 unified welterweight champ. I don't see Spence fighting a guy like Jaron Ennis. Ennis hasn't really made a big name for himself yet. He's on the rise. It'd be a high-risk fight right now for Spence, and he just has other big names he could fight, you know, and titles to win. Like, it looks like he's going after your Dennis Ugas to unify welterweight titles next, so I don't see him giving Ennis the time of day. #2 is Terence Crawford. I don't believe Crawford would be interested in this fight, even if it could be made. I know Ennis called out Crawford, said he's better at everything than Crawford is in the ring. But, you know, Crawford, it wouldn't make sense to fight Ennis yet. Even though Crawford is desperate for big-name opponents, it wouldn't make sense, because if he takes the risk and fights somebody as talented as Ennis and loses, then, you know, that's going to expose Crawford, obviously, because he's undefeated. But what if he were to win? Then people are going to say, well, Ennis was still too green for you, so what? I don't think Crawford's interested in that, even if the fight could be made. Now, #3, I still have the Pac-Man, Manny Pacquiao, even though he hasn't scheduled his next fight yet. It looks like he's on the verge of it. But Pacquiao, no way, would be interested in fighting Jaron Ennis. Excuse me, one second. Now, #4 is Showtime Shawn Porter. This is interesting. Porter looks like he's going to be asked out again and not get a big fight against any of the top dogs. So why not fight Ennis? And if I'm Porter, I'm considering this fight, because Porter is fearless. He will fight anybody, and Porter has and can expose fighters whether he wins or loses. So Porter goes out there and loses to Ennis. Ennis bumps into the top 10, but after the way Porter has performed against some of these top guys, do we really think Porter's not going to step up to the plate and fight Ennis tough? Maybe he will, maybe he won't, but I think Porter might consider it. I'm still leaning towards the less likely, because Porter is a top dog, and he might not want to take the risk, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so #5 is your Dennis Ugas, the former the actual WBA super champion. I don't see it. Ugas is lined up to fight Errol Spence. You know, reportedly that they're talking to each other. It looks like that fight's gonna happen in June or July. So I don't see Ugas fighting Ennis next. #6 is Keith one-time Thurman. Haven't heard anything on Thurman when he's coming back, but when he does, he's not taking a risk against a guy like Ennis. Not in his first fight back since July of 2019 when he lost to Pacquiao. No way. #7 is Danny Garcia. Now, Danny Garcia is reportedly moving up to 154 next. So, and even if he wasn't, I don't think he'd risk it and take it on a guy like Ennis. #8 is former 4-division world champion Mikey Garcia. Mikey, I don't believe, would fight a guy like Jaron Ennis next. He's just too big, too tough of an opponent, and to come right out against. You know, I think Mikey wants a bigger name opponent or somebody less of a risk at welterweight, so I don't see this one. Ennis is now #9 for me in the division. #10 is still Jamal James, Josecito Lopez, guys on that level. You know, Jamal James would be interesting, but I think he has a mandatory due next. But Jamal James is a guy who has been fearless, and they are both with the PBC, so I don't think Jamal James would be a hard sell if after his mandatory defense he said, hey, fuck it, I'll fight him. You know, that is a possibility. So, maybe. And then number 10, or well, also tied with him is Josecito Lopez. You know, Lopez might be the guy they throw him in against. Lopez might be the guy they can talk into that, you know, and pay him enough money to do it. So, Lopez might be the guy. So, we'll see. But Jaron Ennis is very talented. He's undefeated. And he's very, very good. And he looked great against Lipinets. That, even though Lipinets' style fits his style, you know, coming forward, he's able to get off punches and land shots. But still, he looked fantastic against a tough fighter like Lipinets. So, I definitely want to see him continue to move up and test himself. Not sure how many possible top 10 opponents there are for Jaron Ennis, because I think a lot of these guys are going to stay out of his way until he actually becomes a legitimate big name or until he becomes a mandatory challenger. But I wouldn't rule out Shawn Porter in the top 5, even though I lean towards the less likely. And I wouldn't rule out fights with Jamal James and Josecito Lopez. But there are other guys who sit in the top 15 and top 10, top 15 and top 20 that would be top 10 in any other division. So I definitely think Jaron Ennis might consider some of those, and that's probably where he's going next. But I hope to see him in some kind of an eliminator. I like Jaron Ennis a lot, so we'll see what happens. But that's what's next on Jaron Boots Ennis, following his career best win, a 6th round knockout win over former champion Sergey Lipinets. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. True Boxing, you've been hit with the truth.